How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Buddy's House of Horror podcast. We've got a really laid back and chill discussion for you guys today as me and Midnight Miles discuss what we think would make some of the greatest horror double features of all time. We went into this very loose. We just thought about some ideas of films that would pair very well together, like a nice wine and cheese combination. Especially getting ready for summertime. A lot of these I think would work very well at the drive-in cinemas. But instead of listening to me yap about it right here, let's just get right to the episode. So now let's get spooky. Well, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Buddy's House of Horror podcast. It has been a hot minute since we've done an episode for you guys, but I'm excited to be back with all of you and excited to be back with Midnight Miles. How's it going, man?
Hey, here we are, man. You want to tell everyone why we're here today? Why you invited me on again today?
Well, I guess I'll talk about a little bit of the inspiration behind this episode, and we're kind of watching it now on the TV. I always like to put on a little ambiance video when we're recording just to kind of get you in that headspace. So right now we're dealing with some drive-in theater ambiance. It's a hell of a time, and you just came off of, I guess it's a couple weeks ago at this point, but what sparked the idea for this episode was what I like to call one of Miles's peak weekends of the year, where he's pure, unadulterated Miles. Where you were at the drive-in, 3 nights in a row?
Two nights. Two nights in a row. Yeah,
well,
2 nights.
Tell us about it, man.
Well, we were fortunate enough, technically, how do I make this not the longest story ever? But we're fortunate enough to get the 45th anniversary run of Dawn of the Dead here at the drive-in about 20 minutes from us. In North Ridgeville, Ohio, the Autorama. If you're in the Ohio area, specifically Northeastern Ohio area, I definitely recommend checking it out. I think Buddy would also recommend that.
My buddy Jeremy, who lives in Florida now, when he just heard you mention his promised land, he popped.
Oh, yeah?
Sure. Yeah, the very beloved theater in the Ohio area, yeah.
But they went above and beyond because I'd seen some screenings. I've been kind of following. There's actually like a Dawn 40. It's like dawn45.com that has a listing of everything. They only had one Ohio day, and it was Columbus, and it was at the Gateway. They had it for like maybe 2 nights, and I was like, man, Ohio's getting shafted. But Regal, the past 2 years, has done Dawn of the Dead. 1 year was 3D, 1 year wasn't. So I've been very fortunate. Dawn of the Dead's my favorite film ever, by the way. I won't go into too much of a tangent about that, but. So I was going to go on a drive-in vacation anyways that weekend to go to Pennsylvania. And they just so happened that the day before they announced they would do night, dawn, and day. But, we both went. But my God, it got cold, windy, and slowly started raining.
It was one of the coldest nights of my entire life.
It was ridiculous.
But it was a great time. It was the second time seeing Night of the Living Dead at the drive-in. First time seeing Dawn in a theater-type setting ever. So it was...
You didn't go when Regal had it the past couple years?
No. I've never seen it in a theater at all. So it was quite the experience. Again, it was very cold. I mean, at that point it was... Was it still April? It might have still been... It was April.
It was April, last weekend in April. And it sucked because the nights around it... Like when I went to PA the next day... It was like 62 at night and almost no wind. It was way fucking better. What did it get that? Like 40s, wasn't it? With wind?
It was real cold. I know we all had blankets and everything.
I did not make it today. They started them a little late. I think when dawn ended, it was about 1 in the morning, right? Maybe like 12:45.
I think that I made us stay until at least Day of the Dead showed up on the screens. We say that we saw all three of them.
I think that I don't know, but I do remember looking back as we were leaving, and it was the beginning, and I was like, fuck. I wanted to stay, but I brought Shelby, my girlfriend, with me for both of these days, and she is not really a late night person. So the fact that she made it almost all the way through dawn, and it was, I mean, when we say it was cold, it was like windy, and it did sprinkle some words. I mean, it was pretty miserable, and we were out there for like almost 4 hours, and I don't, and I knew I was staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning the following night and driving to Pennsylvania. I was disappointed I didn't get to see Day, but I think it made my whole weekend better by choosing to leave and go to sleep. The next day, I went to the Riverside Drive-In in northern Pittsburgh. They do 2 events, one in the spring, one in the fall, that are just like 2-day drive-in fest. They do 3 to 4 films each night. It's super affordable, and you can camp there if you pay like an extra $15 a person or something. So we went the second night, which was a sci-fi night. And, sci-fi I don't really think gets a lot of like nights like that. You hear horror nights or stuff, but this was actually like all science fiction, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Escape from New York. So different kind of science fiction. It wasn't all aliens or, whatever. Star Crash, and then Galaxy of Terror. I did pretty fucking good. I made it all the way to the beginning of Galaxy of Terror. And mind you, these had intermissions and previews in between each of these. So it was long. Like, I went to bed 2:30-ish that second night, and I was up to, so I've seen Galaxy of Terror multiple times. I really wanted my girlfriend to see it. She did not. She I'm not going to lie, she made it through about 1.5 films on Saturday night. God bless her. She's not used to that, but it was a long night for sure. But it was great. They make you, if you pay for camping, they make you breakfast the following morning, pancakes and eggs. If you want to get meat, you can. Unlimited coffee. You can stay there, they'll refill the coffee all morning, so you can go back and get cups of coffee. It's like one of the best, still cheap things you can do. That's just fun. If you're into that, you have to be into this kind of stuff. If you're not going to have a good time, but it's good. Like-minded individuals. The weather was real nice in PA the second night, thank God, or I wouldn't have made it probably,
Yeah. It sounds like a good time. I've always wanted to go, so hopefully for one of the next ones I'm able to make it out there to it. But it got me thinking about what are some of the greatest double features that you can come up with. What are some films that you think pair really well together? I added some extra challenges to myself. I wanted to do films that because it would have been so easy to be like, oh yeah, perfect double feature. You watch Halloween and then you watch Friday the 13th or whatever it is. I tried to do stuff that was a little more out of the box. Just films that I think have a similar vibe, films that really just pair well together, basically. Films that aren't in the same franchise, films that aren't the same director, films that don't have the same main actor in it. Just films that generally just I feel would pair well together. Not even necessarily in a drive-in setting. It doesn't have to be at a drive-in. Just films that if you're doing a double feature, these would be good ones to check out. That's how I approached it. Did you have a similar approach, or what were you thinking?
See, I didn't even overthink this, but subconsciously I just did everything you already said for the sake of making something interesting. And, mine all came to me very quickly, even though it's not something I put a lot of thought in before this, but they're all very different. So in regards to if you put the multiple double features side by side, they're very different. So hopefully maybe some films that the audience hasn't either seen or not in a long time. But to be honest, I actually wanted to watch all these, if I would have had more time this week or another week run up, I probably would have done these double features. Because I actually got me stoked. I'm probably going to do these at some point because a couple of these I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, a couple of mine are ones that I'm really pulling out of my bag of tricks.
There you go.
Some films I haven't thought about in years until I was kind of making this list. I think I thought about it a little bit too hard. So I took a step back and kind of just did what was natural. Because I would do a thing where, I would think of a film that, I really wanted to talk about and then try to find one that, paired with it, and I couldn't do it.
The first one came to mind almost immediately because it's one that I believe I've done before or would always recommend to people. And then the other ones kind of just, fell in naturally. Because I had thought about I guess initially you sit down and you're like, well, yeah, I should pick one I really like and then see if I, out of the box. And I think sometimes you just get more frustrated than anything.
Yeah. So, who wants to start us off? Do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You're the show host. I always let you pick. You always tell me. What do you think?
Well, you're the guest. I will let you go first. While you start off, I'm going to shut this back door because I don't know if it's picking it up on this microphone, but there are dogs going wild down the street right now.
Wow, I'm probably trying to get pregnant, bro. You know what I'm saying?
They're in heat, bro.
So while Buddy's doing that, I'm old school. I have a notebook. I have multiple notebooks. I love having a nice notebook and pen and paper. So
I'm going to crack open my beverage real
there
fast.
You go.
There we go.
Buddy's parched. Here we go. Now you know it's serious. The door's shut. Beverage is open. We're ready to go. For my first 2 films, the double feature, I decided that I guess this would be the thing that's maybe the most like mainstream. Like if I had a more mainstream double feature, even though I wouldn't consider these super mainstream, but for horror fans or listeners of the podcast, pretty sure that the people have seen these. If not, please actually shut the podcast off. Go watch both of these.
But then make sure you come back to the podcast.
And then please come back. But my first one is The Burning and My Bloody Valentine, if I could talk right today.
Ooh, that's a solid. I wouldn't have thought to pair those together because like when you think of Burning, it could have been so easy, and that's why we're doing this laid back nature. Like because you could do like The Burning and Sleepaway Camp. You could do like all these other films that like take place in that similar setting. So doing that with My Bloody Valentine is actually more unique. Like that's something that wouldn't have come to me like naturally.
Yeah. These are not only two of my favorite slashers, but also 2 of my favorite just films to go back to time and time again. I discovered both of these right around the same time, right after high school, right when they both finally got DVD releases, because these went about 15 years after DVDs started before they ever got a release. Both, I had started reading a lot of like magazines and books on horror. I had for a while. I mean, I always say that's how I learned about this stuff, was actually like reading and then being like, all right, well, eventually I'll probably find a way to be able to see this, The Burning, for everyone that doesn't know, it is kind of a Friday the 13th-esque film, but it involves, instead of Jason, a man named Cropsey, who is put in a horrible accident. He is disfigured, and, kind of after that, you kind of figure out he's got to come back for some vengeance. I won't spoil too much more. Both of them are released. What I did in some of mine was I tried to be like, what, like similarities between the 2 of them. Both are released in what I think is one of the best years of cinema, 1981. Probably the peak year for slasher as far as like actual quality, before it went too silly, where there are films with no POV, no anything. Both to me are like the perfect examples of a slasher film. Like honestly, like the tropes, setting, everything like that. Iconic looking killers. They have iconic weapons. You know what I mean? Right. I like that both focus on. One is basically an urban legend, in Cropsey. In My Bloody Valentine, you see either urban legend or almost like a ghost story. You know what I mean? Like the local town legends. So they kind of had that similar theme, regardless of the setting being vastly different.
Right, setting's vastly different. Time period is vastly different. Like one's obviously on Valentine's Day, the other's at a summer camp. Yeah.
I looked at it this way. The Burning, and I guess I didn't really, it's not a deep thought, but I mean, between these things, The Burning is almost like a direct descendant or, follow up in a weird way to like Friday the 13th in regards to like the aesthetic and all the things. Probably the best Friday the 13th quote unquote clone.
Right.
To a degree. Where My Bloody Valentine, I feel like, is more Halloween inspired, like prototype.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Local boogeyman. He's a killer from the past. He's come back. I mean, similar beats, but completely different stories, and they don't feel like straight up clones. They felt very inspired, like very.
It's the more niche version of the Halloween and Friday the 13th double feature that I mentioned at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. What are your? I mean,
I like both films. I like The Burning a little bit better. Jason Alexander. That film is obviously a treat.
Good.
My Bloody Valentine. That's one that I've always wanted to see in more of a grand setting, I guess. Like, that's one I've always watched just like on like a shitty small TV, stuff like that. I've never even watched it like on Blu-ray or like a good release.
Have you seen the restored uncut version?
I have not. Not to my knowledge.
I should bring it over because I have that, because that was something that was like lost for years and years. Like when I first saw My Bloody Valentine, it was the edited version and I still loved it, but that was the only release. They'd found, just like typical story, found the vaults, they found all the other footage that was cut.
Yeah.
They put it back in a cut where it was like an option on like a DVD menu. Because I've owned like every fucking release of this on DVD or Blu-ray. But it was real, quality was real bad because it was real work print. I mean, but then eventually when they had done a new Blu-ray release, they had someone go in to restore everything finally, after almost 30 years. And that's what I have. And man, it's fucking incredible to see all that. Can't imagine the film now without that stuff not in there. And I know I kind of told what The Burning was, so just for like My Bloody Valentine. My Bloody Valentine, just a great, kind of local boogeyman story. Harry Warden is the main guy. There's a mine collapse. I'm not going to go too into it, but he kills the other miners and escapes. And then some other stuff kind of happens, and he's coming back for revenge, or he and it's in a mine, so he has the miner's mask, the pickaxe. He's this very iconic look.
Yeah, a lot of tension going on around the town, like they're throwing like a dance at the time, it's like, oh, are we really gonna let them keep going with this when so and so might be coming back? Like blah 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 blah.
There's murders before that happens, so it's but. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that? I mean, two of my favorite. These are two, like both in my top 100 films. Like I could watch these. These are like comfort films for me, honestly, over the years.
Yeah. Not too much to say about those. I think those are both solid picks. Like again, like I think it could have been so easy to pair like My Bloody Valentine with another holiday slasher, or to pair The Burning with another like summertime slasher. So in both of those films, like I feel like they fit that drive-in aesthetic. Like those films, like you kind of want to watch them outside. Like that sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go with my somewhat normie one next. Even though I think a lot of none of mine are like super obscure films. Like I think all of mine are actually films that if you're a horror fan, you know of, or at least have heard of these films or whatever. But these are definitely the two biggest, most mainstream ones. And I actually took like an opposite approach with this. Instead of, because like when you're thinking drive-in, you're thinking of summertime. I kind of went with a winter vibe for this double feature. Not only in aesthetic, but also like the isolation aspect of it. I said The Shining and The Thing.
Oh, perfect.
I think both of those would do very well together. Obviously, if you don't know what The Shining is about, they're in a hotel, it's wintertime, they're trapped in there. Are ghosts coming and doing strange shit, or is Jack Nicholson insane? And then you have The Thing, again, cold isolation, and there is the thing, you see it, like there's no doubt that there's something supernatural happening, but it's who is the thing? What's going on? How are they losing complete grip of their own reality? Can they trust each other?
Both very good studies in paranoia. So there's like paranoia, isolation, like you mentioned. The themes, when you think about them, are very similar while being polar opposite as can be as far as the actual subject matter that those themes are a part of. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Again, two very well-known horror films. I think they would pair very well together. If you were to do a double feature, I think you could do, like, as long as you get a plow, you could do a double feature at a drive-in in the wintertime. Just stay in your car. But, yeah.
I was gonna ask something while I was doing mine. What would the order be? Would it be Shining Thing or Thing Shining?
I think you gotta lead in with The Shining before you get to The Thing.
Okay.
Because I think if you do The Thing first, the crowd is gonna be too like on that adrenaline rush, and The Shining is gonna kind of bring them down a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, and here's something. If you want to go crazy like you did with Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and then Day of the Dead, if you want to stick around after that and get the third film, I think The Lodge would pair well with the two of those. And that's kind of like, it's, again, that was made like decades, like almost 40 years later, basically. But a lot of those themes are still prevalent in that as well, where if you haven't seen that film, again, you're stuck in a cold environment, you can't go anywhere. But this one, is she going crazy or are her stepchildren fucking with her?
Yeah.
So they all deal with very similar themes, but they're all very different types of films. They just have a similar aesthetic.
The Lodge, I think, honestly, of the past 5 years, is one of the most underrated films where it got a little bit of hype when it came out, and then it came out, because like we had talked about it on one of our early, I think actually on our Halloween podcast, maybe. We did, where that was the last thing I saw in theaters, because they were showing it at Valley View, and I feel like the whole COVID thing, the world changed, and people were just not really focused on frivolous things or just even maybe thinking about media or about anything like that, where I feel like got its legs cut out from under it right away. And then no one, I mean, just like the film, speaking of the drive-in, that we saw, The Wretched, where, it made money, the drive-in, it was a big thing. And then I've heard no one talk about it since, you know what I mean? It's like kind of some films that came out that time. I wonder like if those are going to be, at least of the past, maybe this next decade, like,
they're going to be
one remembers,
completely forgotten,
just gone. Yeah. But I love people. Your boy Jared was giving me shit about liking Lodge, and then he looked on his Letterboxd. We were in a group chat, and he's like, he gave it a good review. And he's
I watched it with Jared. He liked it.
Yeah, and then he's like, I'll have to watch it again and give it a lower grade. So that's how just another reason. But anyways, I love The Lodge. I think it's honestly really, maybe when I really think about it, probably one of the most underrated horror films of the last 5 years. Maybe that's another podcast though. But anyways, continue. That was a good, really.
I mean, that's really all I have to say about those. I mean, those are, with the exception of The Lodge, those other two, like, there's nothing I can say about them that hasn't already been said. But I just think, and that's another thing about mine, is I kind of threw in a little bit of a curveball. Like, some of these actually have a third one. It's sort of like a little runner-up. If you were going to do a triple feature.
We'll see if maybe I can,
pull something out of the hat.
Yeah. I will say, though, Burning and My Bloody Valentine, the order that I said it, that's the way it is. Because I feel like My Bloody Valentine is a scarier film than The Burning. Even though The Burning has a couple of my favorite scares ever. But the point is, 50% of it's much more lighthearted with the camp stuff. Where I feel like My Bloody Valentine going on later when it's darker out, it's much more, I would say, atmospheric film.
And it's almost like you're going into the mine. It's getting darker outside.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of The Burning takes place during the day.
Yes.
So.
Any other thoughts on that one?
Cool.
That you
No. We can move on to your next
one. All right. Me and my notepad here. So the next one are two films that I've seen that I always wanted to see, and I've only seen within the past couple years. So I thought that was a cool way to do it. One is The Nest, and the second one is The Blob, 1988, the remake. So I think I recommended The Nest to you recently because I always wanted to see it because the poster art. Do you know anything about The Nest?
It's just from what you've mentioned to me briefly.
Has a great iconic poster of a cockroach, like almost like seducing a woman that's like scantily clad on the cover. For years, I wanted to see it based on that alone because I was like, it's one of those like great. If I was back in the 80s, Buddy's looking at it now. You see that in like a box art, and you're like, oh, I gotta check this out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's very like imagine looking in a video store and you see that, you're like, oh, it's it's fucking cool. I looked at it this way. Another thing, like I said, like kind of themes in both. They're both small towns facing invasion from some kind of species.
Right.
The nest. I guess I should maybe say briefly what both of them are about. The nest is involving a small coastal town that all of a sudden is having like almost like a mutated cockroach infestation, which doesn't sound horrible. It sounds a little gross at first, but we're talking about fucking mass quantities of flesh-eating cockroaches. So shit's going bad, and it's going bad real quick. Involves like kind of like a ragtag group of people. There's some inner story drama, but kind of the townsfolk and how they're reacting and stuff. Obviously, there's main characters, and, things like that. The Blob. I mean, hopefully, people in here have at least know what the Blob is. The story a little bit between the original and remake. The Blob 1988, similar premise to the original. Alien entity comes down. It's literally like encasing people, eating people, infecting people, or anything under the sun. You can say it's growing in size, growing in mass. The government comes in and they're trying to contain it and stuff like that. I mean, how else would you describe the Blob? Is pretty much on point, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the main gist of it, and it's well known for being a film with great practical effects in it. And
you're saying I'm putting both, or there you're saying both? I mean, kind of both.
Well, I haven't seen The Nest, so I can't speak for.
Oh no, I meant like both Blob.
Both Blob. Oh, for the time, yeah, but specifically the one you're talking about.
The one.
Oh, and they're both incredibly different films. Like,
yes.
Like the 50s Blob is such a product of what I would have imagined the 50s were like. I obviously wasn't there, nor was I in the 80s. But as far as like, if you're watching films from the 50s or films from the 80s, it's very representative of the time.
Yes.
So,
both, obviously, the small town, the Blob is just invading basically like what I put is ideal 1980s Americana. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But they both have, of course, that's why I put both. They both have great practical effects because a lot of the kills in the nest, obviously, late 80s, kind of like still the heyday of practical effects. Is so, good gore and stuff in it. Both of them, I'm not going to spoil them, but I'm putting on there, both have really good climaxes. That's one thing I think that 80s horror specifically, they knew how to build a finale of a film. Where I feel like sometimes nowadays, the journey's better than the climax.
Yeah.
Which can be okay, but if you leave with a weak payoff or a weak ending, that was a pretty good film, but the ending was weak.
Yeah.
You're always going to say that, never, whatever. Or that didn't end well, The Blob in the remake, without spoiling too much, it kind of changes it a little bit from the 1950s one. Involves more of science, not so much alien, because it does deal with biological warfare and lockdowns, quarantines. Like Buddy said, the special effects, and like I mentioned, are off the fucking charts. If you're a fan of special effects, kind of like The Thing, for example, you'd be very much into, I think, some of the gore and some of the effects and like the design of it in The Blob 1988. Where the nest is genetically engineered cockroaches that are out of control. Both are like out of control forces of nature, just using that as an example that, these normal people are trying to figure out how the fuck do I like stop this or get control over it, and like I'd said, both of them actually represent like ideal American, like smaller mid-sized towns. I mean, both of these places in the Blob 88 and the Nest, I'm like, damn, I wish I lived there.
Yeah.
Like in the 80s, well, because, they had all the local shops. They had, everyone knew everybody. People were having fun in it. It was just kind of one of those like, oh man, the 80s looked
sick.
Yeah, the 80s looked cool, man. It looked good.
I like that both of yours, like, just to kind of go back to like the double feature, like drive-in aspect of it, they're both, obviously The Blob is a remake of a 50s film, but The Nest, it sounds like it is a callback to all those 50s monster on the loose, like films with, you know, the giant ants and cockroaches and all that stuff that you would get back then too. So even looking at the poster, like you could, because it's not a real picture or anything, it's a drawing. Like it could have been a poster from the 50s.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
No, I dig it. I like that. I'm on board.
I might bring the Nest over sometime soon, because that's probably one of the few films recently. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece, but it's one of those good 3.5 to 4 star films that you're like, oh, I'd watch that again soon.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe sometime this summer we'll throw it on. I'll bring it over.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds very laid back. It doesn't sound like something you gotta have your full brain on the entire time.
I will say, for these first couple double features, for me especially, I think these are ones where they're all actually these 4 films, even though I know you haven't seen the Nest, but these are actually good. You're not you don't need to be smoking 15 joints and 12 beers deep to just barely enjoy this because it's such a fucking piece. These are actually what I would consider good horror films, Yeah. But they would fit the aesthetic. But anyways, any final thoughts on that?
I don't think so. So okay. on to my next one. I'm trying to decide which one of these I want to do next. Oh, you never talked about what order would you be seeing them in? Are you seeing the Nest first, or is it the Blob first? What's the vibe?
So, sorry, I was trying to, not break the thing here, but I did grab another drink. I think the way that I have placed them, and somehow naturally in just my brain, I think I just did it, I would do the Nest and then the Blob.
Okay.
Because I feel like the Nest, I don't know, it's just a gut feeling that I think it would show better showing the Nest first.
Yeah.
And then the Blob maybe is similar as, again, the atmosphere. I think that, more of the Blob takes place at night. Quite a bit of the Nest, I would say it's a 50-50 with the Nest. I just think it's a better run-in. I think the Blob's a slightly better film than the Nest.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Again, ending on a good climax. So the slightly better film is what's after.
Yeah.
So mine, because all of mine I went with a different kind of aesthetic for it. So this one, you got to hear me out because this concept's a little wild, okay? This one is a mystery screening. So when you're showing up, you may only know what the first film is and you don't know what's going to come next, but it's going to tie in.
Okay.
So, and this is a wild one. This film I have not thought about for years. You're going to pull up to your drive-in, you're going to sit down, the sun's going down, and you're watching The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Wow. I just listened to a spoof podcast about this film. I mean, I've seen the film, but anyways, continue.
And not to give away the ending of the film, but so you're watching it. The film is obviously it's a Jane Doe body. It follows 2 coroners who are trying to identify not only who this person is, but what could have potentially led to their demise, from what I remember. Right. I haven't seen it in years, so that's my general recollection of it. And shit goes crazy. Yes.
You know that film? Sorry, I'm okay. I think that film's at least a decade old now.
It's probably at least a decade old now.
Yeah,
sure.
Does that make you feel crazy, though?
Yeah,
I feel like
insane.
That's not that old. But anyways, sorry, go ahead.
So, you're watching that film. Again, not giving away the ending, but the ending goes bonkers, right? The film ends, and then you're watching Robert Eggers' The Witch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And The Witch obviously takes place during Salem witch trial era. And you're wondering, the people listening to this are how does this, how are these tying in together? So that's kind of how, you can't announce what the double feature is when you're going into it because it could ruin things.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to start asking questions like, oh, how could these go together? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It would ruin, this isn't going to ruin it for the listeners, but it would ruin part of the first film.
Right. So, you're watching The Witch. Obviously, another slow burn film that has a crazy ending at the end. So they both fit within that realm thematically.
Right.
And they obviously both tie in because of some of the aspects of both films and how they tie together. And then if you want to go crazy with a third, you can watch any witchcraft movie. If you're a fucking crazy horror fan, you can take it back to the 1600s and you're watching Hex and Witchcraft Through the Ages. So that's my mystery.
You could put Witchboard on the end.
You can put Witchboard on there.
But honestly, would you want to end with Witchboard? Anyways, I'm going off the rails, but it was kind of on the rail, a little off the rails. But anyways, yeah, I think the listeners should check out both of those films if they haven't seen them. If you've seen them, you understand exactly where Buddy's going with that. Oh, you know, it'd be a good one after that to end it, even though it's a little bit different but similar. Lords of Salem, baby.
It'd be hard.
That would be hard. I'm actually reading the novelization of Lords of Salem right now.
So tough.
But honestly, a better book than I thought it was going to be. But that'd be great. Do Autopsy of Jane Doe, The Witch, and Lords of Salem.
It'd be so hard. I haven't seen Lords of Salem in God knows how long.
As soon as I finish the novelization, I'm going to watch the film, you know. I mean, I've seen it, but still, Rob, I know it's maybe not saying much to some people, but Rob Zombie's best film is Lords of Salem it's by a lot. If you know, normally I say I respect everyone's opinions, but if you disagree with me, I'm sorry, you're wrong. The only thing it's close to is Devil's Rejects. And I think we've said on this podcast how fucking bad the last couple films he did. I fell asleep twice trying to watch The Munsters. Did you see The Munsters?
I have opinions about The Munsters. I think I did a review of The Munsters.
Okay.
No, I didn't, but I talked about it in like a compilation video. I think he handled the characters well.
Yeah.
The story was whack, and then it just didn't capture like the spirit of what The Munsters were to me. But I think he actually handled the three main characters a lot better than I thought he would have.
Like I said, I've watched it twice. I've seen almost the whole thing. I want to watch it all the way through again. It's one of those things, once in a blue moon, I have those where it's like, I swear it happened once like a month ago. I had to watch something 3 times to fuck it. I just kept starting it too late. I hate doing that. But I thought The Munsters, even only seeing maybe 80% of it, was still significantly better than 3 from Hell, which I know you haven't seen either, but I've told you to try to avoid it if I've told the stories on here. And I still think The Munsters was better than 31, but I don't know what you thought. I know we're on a tangent. It's okay to get a little tangent.
I haven't seen 31.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Wow.
I own it on Steelbook, but I have not watched it.
We should watch it someday together, and I could just watch your reactions. It's not as bad as... I should just get a really cheap copy of 3 from Hell and be like, all right, let's sit down and do this. But your wife, other people have to be there so I could see their reactions as well.
Oh, God. I never want to be in a room where my wife is watching a Rob Zombie movie.
No?
I don't know how that would go.
Has she seen any of his stuff?
I don't know if she has. I don't know.
All right. The end of this tangent. It's all right. We did a little sidebar here. Do you think Lords of Salem, though, is Rob Zombie's best film?
From my recollection, yeah.
Okay.
Or like that and Devil's Rejects, it's close. Like,
Those
again,
are-
I haven't
yeah.
seen either of them in a really long time. I think House of a Thousand Corpses is very overrated.
I saw that because my girlfriend's a big fan. We saw that for like that re-release last year, like last fall. I still pretty much feel the same. It's one of those things, like I want to like the film more than I do. Every time I watch it, you know, it's like, I'm like, oh, but it just doesn't, something just doesn't click. I don't know.
Yeah. But, like, even then, like, I don't think any of his films, because I know people think that, like, Devil's Rejects is a masterpiece. Like, all of his films to me are, like, very, like, fine. Like, I've never watched one of his things and been, like, blown away or anything.
I think, for me anyways, I think Lords of Salem was the one where I was like, oh, wow. I really thought after Lords of Salem he was going to, like, do some really crazy shit, because I really love Lords of Salem. And then he made films worse than House of a Thousand Corpses, and I was like, what happened here, you know? Anyways, all right. Rob Zombie sidebar done. But I actually think that'd be an excellent double feature, maybe, or triple feature. Maybe I'll even do it. Since you didn't have a third, you're like, you just watch any witchcraft film.
Any witchcraft film, yeah. What do you got for us?
Oh, you want? Oh, we're up, huh?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Maybe by the end of the podcast, I can think of a third one for each of my double features to throw on there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a feat, but so my third one. Excuse me. I am doing two things that are a little bit more modern, which with a drive-in, I don't know. Maybe this won't fit the aesthetic, but I think these would do well in the drive-in. I did What We Do in the Shadows, the film.
So hard.
And then I did A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Have you seen that?
Ooh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have.
So...
Obviously, two vampire films.
Yeah, these would probably be the most obvious where it's like... Yeah, it's two vampire films, you know. But
on such polar opposites of the spectrum.
yes. I put both oddball foreign vampire flicks. Even though, What We Do in the Shadows is...
They speak English, yes.
But it's a New Zealand film. What We Do in the Shadows is a found footage vampire comedy, basically. Kind of follows all the, covers like all the tropes of vampires across the ages as far as, what's been on, book, film, anything like that.
They're like, it's basically like, I'm trying to like think of what you can compare it to, but basically, I mean, they turned it into a sitcom. It feels like it's a sitcom. Like you have different like age ranges. Like you have like the really old vampire. You have all these ones from like different time periods. You have like familiars who are in modern day trying to become vampires. Like there's lots of elements to the film, and I don't know. I think that film is an underrated. Like a lot of people really love the TV show, like so much so. Like I don't even know how many people have watched the original film.
I became a huge fan of the TV show. I think maybe the last I don't even know how long it's been on, but they're filming the final season right now. I think maybe they finished. That's kind of like, I'm like, oh, because like my other favorite show, Letterkenny's done too, but thank God Shoresy's going on. But like some of these newer shows I'm watching, I'm like, oh, they're not so new anymore. They're like, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. It's over. What We Do in the Shadows show, I know I've recommended to you. I still think you and your wife should watch it more, but it's a really good show. Anyways, I do think that it's very underrated. I think the film is honestly like, that is also 10 years old. What We Do in the Shadows, the film.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I remember when it came out, I was working at the video store when we got it on DVD and stuff.
I saw it in theaters, actually. Cleveland actually had it.
Yeah.
So it was nice. I put other things about it. It kind of covers the positives and negatives of being a vampire. Like, there's like, it's not just... I don't want to say there's depth to it, but there kind of is. And there kind of is. The storyline, yeah. I don't know. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I'm trying to think how I want to describe this.
That's a decade old now too.
It is, yeah. The plot it kind of has to do with the one main character. I think he's like, if I remember right, it's been a while since I've seen this. He like lives with his uncle or something, and he meets the girl like randomly at night. The lead vampire.
It's been years. I haven't seen this one since a decade ago.
Yeah.
So,
and I just remember that she skateboards in it numerous times,
yes.
Which I loved. She doesn't do things that are traditional of a vampire. In regards to like how they act or they stalk or stuff like that. I remember that she pretty much only goes after men, if I remember right, because that's part of the thing. Basically, getting back at men that have like wronged people that she knows. I think the main character included, or just her witnessing men doing heinous acts and stuff like that. So a lot of the kills and stuff are based around that. The main guy, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a little bit of like a romance there in his mind. There's really good imagery. It's creepy. It's in black and white. I don't know what else is there to say about it, really.
that pretty much covers everything. The film, it's like, you kind of got to be in the certain headspace to watch that one.
It would be, admittedly, this is kind of like, these are my two picks for, because I guess it was like, oh, it's not that I wanted to get something newer, but it kind of like came across my mind. I definitely think that this would be the most like, for the most niche crowd of anything I said. You know what I mean? Like, you definitely probably would want people that have like seen it, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
So they know what they're getting into, especially, you know, with it being a foreign film, subtitles, everything like that. I mean, some people aren't going to want that, you know?
Yeah.
Even though it'd be easier at the drive-in, maybe, because you wouldn't have to fucking and have your speaker going or whatever. But, I don't know.
No, I mean, I think those are both solid choices. Again, like, those aren't ones that naturally would have come to me to, like, pair them together, so that's good that that was something you thought of. Those are two films I have not seen in a while. Like, I would rewatch both of those.
Yes.
So...
That one, I know, these were hard where they're ones, I watched them a couple times when they, like, came out. I was able to see both of them, actually, in theaters. I think the Art Institute showed Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night. I don't know, it's been, and then I saw them on video, but I mean, still been quite a while for me. I think I've maybe seen What We Do in the Shadows a few times now.
Yeah, I've seen it, like, 2 or 3 times, I think.
But, I recommend the show. I recommend the show to all listeners. There's that new vampire film coming out. I guess it's a little bit of current events, but like, it has a really long title. The theater in Akron's gonna get it. It's like about a vampire girl that's like doesn't want to kill people, so she's looking for people that want to commit suicide, so she can just kill them and get their blood.
I think I have that in my watch list. I can't remember. I can't remember what it was called.
It's like a really long. It's like 6 or 7 words. But it looks fucking great. The trailers I've seen and stuff have been really good. That would be a great triple. I'm calling it already because how good the trailers look. That'd be a fucking good triple theater. Yeah. Even though we don't have the title, but it's some outrageously long title. Look up Vampire Films 2024. It'll probably be on some fucking list. What do you got?
All right. So for my next one, I've got, let's see, because I've got 2 more double features left. So, I guess we'll go with, because I love the Halloween season. And so this is a good one to watch either on Halloween night or in that season outside at the drive-in. It's getting a little cold. You're definitely bringing a hoodie with you, some blankets. I think you're starting off the night watching Halloween 3.
Okay.
Season of the Witch. Getting yourself in that perfect mood. The drive-in perhaps has jack-o'-lanterns lined up all over the place.
All right. Perfect aesthetic. Set the mood.
Obviously, if you haven't seen Halloween 3, it's completely disconnected from the rest of the franchise. The Halloween original 1978 film is actually in Halloween 3. It's on the television several times. It's a completely different story. It follows Tom Atkins, who is a very sleazy doctor who cheats on his wife. I
think they're divorced.
Are they divorced?
I think they're divorced. I'm standing up for Tom Atkins' character, by the way. But I'm pretty sure they're divorced because he's supposed to go give the kids Halloween masks, and she already bought him some. It's not something that like a married couple, like somebody would have said something, you know. Sorry, but I'm defending Tom Atkins' character, like it's his real character.
Either way, he is having romantic relations with a woman who's probably 30 years younger than him at this point. So
even though Tom Atkins was probably only like 45 when they shot Halloween 3.
But anyway, he ends up traveling to this other town where there's some creepy shit going on. Obviously, the film is iconic within its own right. Has some of the greatest... has one of the greatest kills of all time where the kid is turning into a bunch of bugs on the floor. Great ending, great aesthetic. I just love the way the film looks. There's the perfect shot of the children walking over the sun going down, wearing their masks, which leads us into my next pick, which would be one of my favorite recent-ish horror films, even though it's about 20 years old now, which is Trick or Treat.
I knew where you were going as soon as you started Halloween 3. I was like,
So this is the Saw Win double feature. Of course, Trick or Treat, it's an anthology film, but all the films are interwoven together. Again, features a bunch of children wearing creepy masks. And this film just fully embodies the spirit of October, the spirit of Halloween, which is why I love it so much. Not the greatest, like, in-depth story, but I love it a lot for the aesthetic and the way it makes you feel. So I think those two films would pair perfectly together for a double feature.
Another two of my favorites ever as well. I've been a huge Halloween 3 fan since I was a kid. I know people are like, oh, it's underrated. Now it's super hype. Now it's... I've been on that train since I was probably like 10, so it's goated. Has Tom Atkins, the man. He's what every man should aspire to be. But I will say, and I know this is one of your recent favorites, do you do a triple feature? You start with Halloween 3, throw Cobweb in the middle, and then go to Trick or Treat.
Ooh.
So you get people to see Cobweb, so they don't leave. You know what I mean?
You string them along. It's like this film came out in 2023, and it kind of like fell by the wayside. It was like straight to streaming, and not a lot of people saw it. So that'd be a good way to sneak it in. I don't know if it's really fitting in with the Halloween-ish aesthetic,
but it is fall, and there's lots of pumpkins in it. And
there are lots of pumpkins.
So that's where I was kind of coming from with it. That was me tagging on. We tag teamed that last landing. I kind of thought I was like, oh,
well, that's good because I didn't have a third one planned for that one, so we'll go with Cobweb.
All right, here we go. So, man, all of our features so far is shit that I would 100% watch.
100% watch.
Some of my favorite films ever. Favorite films, like a couple of these newer ones of the last decade. Trick or Treat, another. I mean, like you said, it's almost 20 years old. Came out in 2000.
Technically 07, but then...
Technically, but didn't come out till what,
2009.
Yeah.
Both goated.
You think I should come up with a... So this is where I took notes and bullet points, had ideas for the first three. Wasn't sure how many we're going to do.
I have one more if you want to do one more. If you can pull something out of your sleeve.
Was that... So you did three? What were your three then?
I did three. So far I've done The Shining and The Thing.
Right.
I've done the Halloween and Trick or Treat like we just did.
Right.
And... what was my other one? Oh, it was Autopsy of Jane Doe and The Witch.
Okay. What were your bonus picks though for each of them? I guess.
So we got Cobweb
with Halloween. Okay.
For The Witch, we have Lords of Salem and or any witch film.
That's right.
And then for The Shining and what the fuck is The Shining and The Thing, the third one was The Lodge.
Okay. All right. I will try to pull one more off the top of my head, but I'm also going to try to quickly think of my bonus three.
Okay.
All right. For The Nest and The Blob, if I had to do a triple feature, I would put in one that I just watched the other day to fit with the 80s aesthetic and creatures. The Boogans. Have you ever seen it?
It's been in my watch list forever, but I saw that you just watched it on Letterboxd the other day.
I fell asleep the first time, but The Boogans, and especially I guess the biggest thing that'll draw me to this, besides that it kind of is, it's beyond 80s.
Oh yeah.
80s melodrama, romance, everything. But it has a great climax. So that's kind of could be like the main theme of like films where it gets to the climax. But I would put The Boogans in between. I would not finish with that.
Oh yeah.
I would definitely finish with The Blob. But The Nest to bring him in, The Boogans, then Blob.
Sounds like a hell of a night, to be honest.
It'd be a banger. And the nice thing about these films, almost all of them too, all around the 90 to 100 minute mark.
Oh yeah.
Which is something I didn't necessarily mean to do, but I kind of did notice it, and I'm like, okay, that would be good, So you don't have to have an overwhelming 6 to 8 hour fucking night to get through. If Burning in My Bloody Valentine, that's a hard one. I think I would put this in the middle as well. I think this might throw the theme off a bit, but if I'm trying to get more people to see something, I would put Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Okay.
Have you ever seen it?
No.
Oh my God.
Miles is like, I know what I'm bringing over tomorrow.
You have, wow.
No.
All right. I have it on video, of course, so we need to do that soon. Honestly, to me, it's up there with Trick or Treat of just ones that like Trick or Treat now because of the aesthetic, especially, and because of Sam, you know, it's kind of transcended its initial like being bumped on a shelf somewhere, being, relegated to a video release. Like, it's kind of overcome all of these things and become like a huge cult classic.
Right.
But Rise of Leslie Vernon, I think if it had a theatrical release, it would have been a big deal. I think it was just came out a little bit at the wrong time.
So there's another one you're putting in between.
Yes. To get eyes on it, and because it's still technically a slasher, and it's a really well-made film. I thought about doing one of the Hatchet films in the middle, but one of the Hatchets would still work. You could throw any of the four in there. You'd still have a fucking banger-ass time. Still fitting in that, like, 90-minute-esque mark.
Yeah.
So, either one. But now, this was good I brought up Behind the Mask, because now we definitely got to watch it. It's been a while since I watched that one, too. Man, as far as, like, to keep the theme with the vampires, it's a little harder, a little more niche with the foreign stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to come back to that later in the podcast. That's a hard one. Can you think anything off the top of your head for that third one? For the
I mean,
vampires?
if it was for me, I would be definitely throwing on Kolchak the Night Stalker in there. But I know you haven't seen that. That's one I've been trying to get you to see for years. That one we need to have a documentation of. That one's we got to do a fucking podcast on. But
I've seen some of the show, which is
it came after the film, so
right.
like,
But it's just called.
It's called Kolchak the Night Stalker. The first film is just called The Night Stalker.
Right. I have seen some of the show though, because it was like reruns were on when I was like younger, like late night shit. See what you missed being a few years younger. You could have been watching those reruns.
Yeah, but it's another great like sort of vampire like pseudo comedy. Like it has like some goofy moments in it, but it's not taken like too seriously or too comedic at one aspect of it. So
I know one that I could throw in the middle of that, even though it's an excellent fucking suggestion. I think it's one that I bought you a copy of the Blu-ray when I bought myself a copy. One of the first
The
gifts,
Vampire Lovers?
Yes. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't watched it yet, no.
Oh my God, it's great. I'm not going to explain too much more than that, but I think I would have to put that... Ooh, I don't know. Maybe put that at the end.
I think you might have to do that one at the end because it's so... Because the other two are still like kind of like modern.
Yes.
So like I think if you were to either lead in with that one or have it in the middle, it kind of might throw things off. I think that's the one you end with where like the true MVPs are staying all the way through.
Yes.
But if you got to dip out, it's just the Vampire Lovers.
Where would you put Kolchak at?
I think that one you do it at the end too.
Do it at the end
because
too.
you might lose some people.
Yeah. God, I wish I could think of like a better example off the top of my head for a third one on that one, but that's hard. I'd have to. I'll come up with it, but I'd have to dig.
Kolchak and Vampire Lovers, that'd be a good double feature in and of itself.
I actually was thinking about that too. All right, so one more double feature. I have one coming to mind. I think I would do Night of the Demons. You know, I'm a big fan of that film.
Loves Night of the Demons.
Love it. Actually, I watched it recently, and I gave it a slight lower score. A half star lower. Because it still was hitting, but You know,
I will
sometimes
say,
it doesn't hit the
I
same.
will say this, and I don't know if I've brought this up to you, but we've gotten requests to review that franchise from some of the loyal listeners.
I would do it.
I watched all of them this year just to kind of refresh my memory on all of them.
I've seen all 3, and I know that. I mean, you do a shout out. Tell us, your homie lets you borrow 2 and 3. Not me.
Yeah,
not this homie.
Yeah, my homie JR. He demanded that I watch parts 2 and 3, so he brought them. He brought them to me to watch them, and then I watched the remake as well. It was streaming somewhere. I can't remember where it was.
The remake is so 2000s, and for some reason, I still really like it because it's just so bad shit.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so different than the other 3, but I don't know. It had fucking was it Shannon Doherty or whatever, the one from American Pie?
Yeah.
She's in it. I watched that when it came out on video. I remember renting that day one.
And he was never the same.
I like the director. I forget who directed, but he was doing a bunch of shit at the same time that I liked. Night of the Demons, obviously the original, no sequel, original. And then fight myself on which one, but I think I'm gonna go with my gut and do Return of the Living Dead Part 3.
That's
hard. I love it.
He loves it, yeah.
You showed up and saw the last 45 minutes. You're like, I don't have to watch the rest. I think every time I've said on this podcast, anytime I start dating someone new or whatever, I think within the first 10 things we watch together, I'm pretty positive it's always Return of the Living Dead Part 3. It's always within the first 10 films we watch together. Blair Witch Project is usually in there too.
Okay.
Those are my, apparently, I think Return of the Living Dead Part 1, 3, and Blair Witch. If anyone start dating, I mean, I'm happily in a relationship now, but it's I'm slinging them at you to kind of gauge what kind of fucking person you are,
Solid picks, of course, both classic 80s films.
Return of the Dead Part 3 is 90s, though, actually. Sorry to cut you off.
That's
but
okay. 80s franchises.
He's not wrong when he says it, where if you told me it came out in 88, the same year, technically, even though I think Night Demons was 87, but came out in 88. If you told me it came out in 87, 88, I'd be like, yeah, of course. Because it's one of those ones where, even when I first watched it, I watched it young. I didn't have as much knowledge of stuff, but, over the years as I've watched it, I'm like, this is maybe the most 80s film, well, one of the most 80s films in the 90s. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
But let's be real. 1990 to 92. I mean, I know we talk about rollover and decades we've talked about on this show together, but I really think for some reason the 90s took, out of all the decades I can think, just viewing through media, books and stuff like that, felt like the 80s really rolled over into the 90s.
Oh, for sure.
Really rolled over. It wasn't really until Nirvana and Green Day, some of these other bands blowing up and pop music, it's where things really took the turn into what the 90s were, or what they're remembered for. Sorry, we're on that part of the podcast where I'm in tangent
mode.
But both films, crazy practical effects everywhere. Night of the Demons is another. It's on Halloween. It's become one of my favorite Halloween flicks. Based around the holiday.
Yeah.
Bunch of kids going to a party. Ancient evil curse basically becomes a haunted house slasher flick, basically almost like a haunted house supernatural slasher flick. Tons of gore, tons of off the wall effects. Even there's things I don't want to spoil for people, so if they haven't seen it, Return of the Dead Part 3 is almost like a romantic drama zombie film. It's about two people that are in love and what you would do to try to save the person you love, even if it's the absolute wrong choice. But then add in some of the craziest zombie makeups I've ever seen and tons of fucking gore. I don't know. What do you think? Thoughts?
I think they fit very well together. I think they both have similar, I don't want to say similar themes, but they just kind of fit well together.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Obviously, Angela is over the top, off the wall, the girl in the third one, when she's going crazy, it's very like similar kind of moments going on for those. What is your third? Because I know you were like bouncing back and forth between.
Well, I was bouncing back on which Return of the Living Dead I wanted to do. I wanted to do 3, like I always wanted to, but I mean, obviously, I think that one of the greatest midnight films of all time, well, I'll put as a midnight film, even though it was released in theaters, obviously at times at midnight. I'm sure in New York City it was. Return of the Living Dead. I mean, it's like the ultimate, like, you know, late night party flick. You know, I mean, I feel like it's one of those ones where maybe why I pick it to show women and stuff like that. You can just, I know we're getting off on tangents, but it's still kind of in the same theme. But like, you throw that on, you can leave the room and come back. There's a crazy dance scene. You come back, there's a zombie attack. Like, there's just so many iconic moment after iconic moment after iconic moment. It's one of those ones you can just throw on anywhere and just watch.
Yeah.
You know? But if I had to do a third with that, because I'm not going to be cheap and put Return of the Living Dead on the end of it, even though it'd be a fucking banger triple feature. You have any ideas?
I mean, there's like so many films from that era that would fit, but it's just trying to find like the perfect one. Because you could do like A Night at the Creeps. You could do.
I almost thought.
You could even do like a Fright Night or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many that kind of like check the boxes of what would make a good film.
I got it.
You got it. Okay.
Another one of my go-to films, Demons.
Original Demons. Okay.
Demons I would put Demons at the end because I think you have Night of the Demons. You know, it's wild. It's a haunted house. It's Halloween. Be the perfect like fall drive-in event.
Yeah.
Then you go into Return of the Living Dead Part 3, where the tone's a little more somber, a little more, you know, whatever. But the film still is constantly moving forward. It's not like you're like waiting for things to happen. But Demons and the climax and everything in Demons is just fucking crazy.
That'll wake you up.
Yeah. If you're struggling at midnight and, you know, all of a sudden you see a fucking monster crawl out of someone's back and race to a corner of the screen, or you wake up and a guy's cutting demons across the face with a fucking samurai sword on the back of a fucking
motorcycle,
motocross motorcycle, somehow driving on the tops of theater chairs. That statement alone, if you like horror cinema or having a good time and you don't want to see that shit, fuck you. You're a poser. Get out of here.
So hard.
Do you have one more? You have one more?
I have one more. So to take us home, it'll kind of bring us full circle because it's a little bit of where we started. So for my last of the double features, I'm starting with a film I've seen at the drive-in twice, which is Night of the Living Dead.
Hard.
Which requires no introduction. Obviously, the first modern quote-unquote zombie film, which effectively invented what zombies are in the pop culture today, because prior to that they were completely different. I think it's just a perfect film to watch at a drive-in, and a film that I think would pair perfectly with it. In fact, it was a low, I don't want to say it was a direct inspiration, but a film that definitely inspired Night of the Living Dead would be Carnival of Souls.
Hard.
I think the two of those would work perfectly together. If you've never seen Carnival of Souls, that came out in the early 60s as opposed to the late 60s. But it's about a young woman who is the only survivor of a car crash that took out not only... actually, it was just the one car. So it took out... They were like in a speed chase. Car goes off a bridge. She's the only survivor. And then she's really just trying to escape that part of her life and find herself. She ends up moving to a new city, which has the haunted solitaire. And she doesn't know why, she doesn't know how, but she's drawn to it. And there's this man who's just called The Man in the film. Not Becky Lynch. It's just his name is The Man. He's got the slick back white hair. He's got a white face like a ghost. And he's just coming to get her. And then there's all, at the end, it's basically like a zombie film. She's getting chased by all these ghouls. So it's two films that I think fit that drive-in aesthetic. I think they pair well together. I think they have similar like pacing and tone.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to have a double feature. I think they both, obviously they're from the same time period. It's not like you're doing too much of a stretch. But if you want to do a little bit of a stretch, a film that I think was inspired by both of these films from the modern era. It's a big film. I love this franchise. Miles, I think, is indifferent around this franchise. But the first... What do you think I'm going to say?
Go ahead.
The first Insidious.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
The first Insidious, when they go into the further at the end, that's right out of fucking Carnival of Souls or Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
With all of the... Again, the ghouls. That's what they were called in Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Who are coming to get them. So I think that would be a good triple feature as well.
I think, too, if you didn't go modern, I think you could do Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price.
See, that is the one that was like the direct inspiration for Night of the Living Dead.
I know.
In fact, Night of the Living Dead, I think, is the greatest adaptation of I Am Legend, which was the version.
Oh, what about the new Will Smith and Michael B. Jordan sequel? That is, the script is finished. Will Smith's happy with it, but they're going with the DVD extras menu only ending to the original film, which probably won't throw fans off at all. And when did the first one come out? Is that 20? Did that come out in 2004?
That's so old. I don't know. It could not have been 2004.
Did you see about that article this week though? He's trying to get that made. Though,
I haven't seen. Is that a recent article?
Something in the past few days. Also, did you see they greenlit?
2007 was the original one. Wow. I was like, there's no way it was 2004.
Hey, 2004.
It's not far. It's not far off.
It's not. Yeah. 17 years. Did you see? Speaking of Insidious, not to I.
They're making a new one. Yes, yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Those are both things we just talked about were two like big things in the horror stuff this week. I guess even though the I Am Legend Will Smith film was, I guess it's horror. What you can say? Was it horror?
Yeah. It's based off of a horror novel.
Yeah,
it's got vampires in it, bro.
Yeah,
of course it's horror.
Yeah, true. No, Insidious being in there, no, it makes sense. I think that would actually be... Would you put Insidious in the middle?
You could, just to kind of like break it up, because like Carnival of Souls and Night of the Living Dead are a little bit similar. So you could...
Would you finish with Night of the Living Dead? Or would you go for...
I think
that's the big opener.
I think you use that as the big opener to kind of set yourself up. Then maybe you do Insidious... And then Carnival of Souls is for the legends out there.
The late night.
Yeah, you're sticking around.
Yeah. Damn, man. No, those are all... Honestly, I had a feeling our list would be very varied. Because I honestly think like our like go-to films are different. Like person to person. I mean, we like a lot of the same stuff. But if you're like... this month I can only watch 10 films and I want them to be all my favorites or classics. What would you pick? I mean...
There'd be a little bit of crossover.
Maybe there'd be a crossover.
But I think 8 out of the 10 films would be probably something different.
What do you think? I know we're going into bonus hours on this, but what do you think the crossovers would be if we could only pick 10 to watch?
Shit, I don't even know, because you would pick Halloween 2. So I don't even know. No, yeah, then I would probably pick Night of the Living Dead, and you would pick Dawn.
I might put both. Because those are, to me, those are, it's no, I just said it earlier in the podcast. Both Night and Dawn are both in my top 10 of all time. Like, Dawn's 1, Night's like 5 or 6 in my top 10.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think I could live without that. But maybe that's another podcast for another day. Because I'm getting a little too far off the beat. I'm beaten path. I'm side questing. I side quested the fuck out of this fucking podcast. Yeah. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it.
Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Again, if you guys are sticking around to the end, make sure you're subscribing to the show, wherever you're listening to it on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you're getting the show. Make sure you're following us on social media. All that'll be in the description below. looking forward to doing some more episodes. We've got a few episodes in the works that I'm excited to start getting the ball rolling on. And yeah.
Dude, are we announcing what series we're doing yet?
I don't think we're announcing it yet. I don't know if we are.
Is it too early to announce it?
It might be a little too early. But
Okay.
I'll do this. We might not only be doing one franchise this year. Potentially.
That's the rumor. That's the rumor I'm hearing around the water cooler. But anything else from me, buddy?
No, I mean, you got anything you need to plug? You doing anything, or what's up?
Just living, man. You know, I wish I could say I had some better creative output going on right now, but maybe we'll do a few more of these, huh?
We'll do a few more of these. The summer is young. Technically, it's not even summer yet, but it feels like summer.
This week felt like the first week of summer with the weather and stuff.
Yeah. So, with that, we will wrap up this show right off into the sunset, and we will see you guys back here again very soon for another episode of the House of Horror.
Thanks, guys.
Hard. Well, that's about it for this time, you guys. I hope you enjoyed our greatest horror double features of all time. If you guys like this concept, let us know down in the comment section below or over on my social media channels, because this is an episode that was really fun to do, and if you guys like it, maybe we'll come back to it again in the future. Again, it was just a real fun, laid-back discussion, just like this intro and this outro. But with that, you guys, I will see you guys in the next episode, so take care and stay spooky.